Welcome to the Influential Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Duncan, and my dream is to inspire moms to pursue their goals and help them make a difference in their world. I'm a mom of 2 young boys, a wife to my high school sweetheart, and a lawyer. This show is a place to hear stories of moms working hard to have a positive influence in their profession or their community, and sometimes both, even as they juggle their responsibilities at work, at home, and to their children. You'll get tangible, practical tips for managing the chaotic world of motherhood and work. Come along as we hear these stories and feel inspired to step outside of our comfort zone as leaders and as a positive force within our communities. I believe that moms can change the world. So I'm here today with my friend Jen Hoverstad, who is a fellow lawyer and a friend from law school. And Jen, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here. This is one that all the people were asking for you, and you were already on my list, but I had a lot of people asking for me to talk with you. So you are a crowd favorite, and we haven't even published it yet. So
I love it. Well,
yes.
I like your crowd. Clearly, they're good people, I guess.
They are your people. So you are a lawyer, mom, and you've been going through a breast cancer journey, but can you just kind of talk a little bit more about kind of who you are and where you're from and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Jen Hoverstad. I was born and raised in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've had some short stints for school purposes in Greensboro as well as Knoxville, but really been in Raleigh all my life. And currently I am practicing law with the Force firm in Raleigh, although we have offices all over the state, and I am part of the estate planning practice there. And for me, as you mentioned, in 2018, I went through a breast cancer journey that I am continuing to go through into 2019. But it was 2018 was a big transitional year for me. I had been practicing in-house for 5 or 6 years prior to that. And really 2018 made me realize that my heart was for serving people, and it was to be in a place, specifically in law, where not only could I serve people, but I could really help people feel more comfortable with life's toughest moments, because that was what the year has been all about for me. And I know each of us are going to go through that in our own ways, and it's been really, I don't know, a privilege, I would call it, to be able to help other people both through tough times, but also just help them prepare for tough times that might lie ahead.
That's wonderful. And you have definitely gone on a journey this year and have shared it. And that's been really impactful for people. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So you have 2 little girls, and you were already in your career when you became a mom. So kind of talk about where you were in your career when motherhood kind of came into play. And I'd like to know how motherhood affected your approach to your work, because I know you've been very kind of career oriented and pursuing a lot of professional goals.
Yes. My husband might argue that I pursue too many professional goals, but yes, exactly. So I graduated from law school in 2011. At that point, my husband and I had been married for, about 3.5 years. And we decided, once I had a career going, we're like, okay, we'll try to start having kids. By 2012, that had not been successful. And so I talked to my OBGYN. She's like, you've been trying for about a year. That's not normal not to at least get pregnant. So let's start looking at other things. So I went through some rather rigorous tests, blood tests, making sure that my uterus was good. And come to find out, even though I was getting a period every month, I actually was not ovulating. And it was something I never would have known, except for the fact that I couldn't get pregnant without medical assistance. So we went through 7 rounds of fertility medications. And finally, in December 2013, I told my husband, after we had gone through a cycle, I was like, I am not starting 2014 with this medication. Like, I just need to take a break. We had been doing it since May, working with our fertility clinic. And I said, I need a break and we need to just kind of rethink where we're at. Because I was even questioning, I was getting ready to turn 30 and I was just kind of questioning everything. And so he's like, that's fine. We don't have to do it. Well, sure enough, January 1st, 2014, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
With our oldest. And I know it was just this whole like crazy wave of emotions. Because I was able to celebrate my 30th birthday pregnant. And it was really kind of this moment of like, oh my gosh, like this happened. But during the period of 2.5 years where we were going through infertility, I developed so many feelings of frustration, of anger, of doubt. And I really thought to myself, like, why am I going through this? Because what I could see on social media was that all my friends are pregnant. You know, I would walk into a public place, I would walk into church, I would walk down the street, and it felt like literally everyone else was pregnant and it was easy for them and no one else was going through what I was going through. So when I did become pregnant, I promised myself, I was like, when I'm ready, I'm going to share our story of infertility because I want someone else to see that if they're going through this, they're not alone. And so while I waited later in my pregnancy, and I don't remember the first time that I shared my infertility story publicly on social media, but I remember the first time I did sometime in 2014, all of a sudden, all these women just like came out of the woodwork and it was like, oh my gosh, me too. I had miscarriages, or I'm going through treatments right now. Or, you know, my doctor has told me like infertility treatments are probably going to be part of our journey. How did you do this? And that's when I realized like sharing a story is really powerful. So I promised myself, you know, that if I had other things happen to me throughout life, like I was going to share those stories because clearly it was very valuable to share. So fortunately for us, as far as our kids go, we gave birth to a healthy baby girl in September 2014, Elin, and she's now 4 years old. And then in June of 2016, we've been using birth control, and I vividly remember my husband and I were on the back patio, and I told him, I was like, look, Carl, I was like, I don't even know why we're using birth control. Like, my body doesn't, you know, want to have children naturally. So this is kind of silly that we're doing this. And he was like, yeah, I agree. We won't worry about it. If we get pregnant, awesome. But, you know, chances are we're just going to accept it. We're going to have one kid. Sure enough, God listened to that conversation and he thought it would be humorous that the next month I would be pregnant. And so in July 2016, we found out we were pregnant with our second, Hallie. And so she was born in April of 2017. And so we have our two, and we are just super thrilled that they are part of our family and we've been chosen to parent them. I grew up in a family with two girls, and so it's just really fun to watch the two of them interact and to watch the two of them grow. And if anything, you know, I know my mom and my grandmothers were such positive role models for me. I definitely want to do the same for my girls.
That's awesome. So they've seen you, you know, in your career. They've also seen this part of your journey this year, you know, your 2018 journey with breast cancer. But before that, just talk about, you know, before the breast cancer journey started, what was it like, you know, in your world as a working mom? And I guess my question is, what was the biggest challenge and how did you manage that challenge?
You know, I think the first word that comes to mind is just chaos. It is pure chaos to try to be a working mom and, you know, feel like you're parenting and keeping up with your kids' lives and feel like you're engaged with everything. We are so fortunate that my parents live right down the road from us. And so instead of hiring a nanny, we essentially hired my parents. And so that's what we did with Elin. I went back to work because I was not, I think it was something with FMLA or my insurance, but I was not in a place where I could take an extended leave where I was working at the time when I had Elin. And so I had 4 weeks of leave and then I went back to work. And so my mom started watching her almost immediately. When I went back to work. Kind of the same with Hallie. My mom stepped in as well. And so while Elin is currently in school, Hallie still spends half her days with my parents. And so we are so fortunate to have people that we trust close by who can help us with the girls. But I think for anybody, whether you have family nearby or you don't, or you have people you trust, or a daycare or a school that you trust, it is still pure chaos to, figure out, okay, like drop off, for anyone who wants to see what it's like to just be kind of in a moment of like, what in the world is going on? Like, just come observe our house between 6:30 and 7:30 every morning, because you never know how the kids are going to wake up in the morning. And some days it can be easy to get out the door. And other days, like, I feel like I have to write a note to Elon's teacher to be like, I am so sorry for whatever state she was in when she got to school this morning, but I don't even know how to fix it for you. Because it is really kind of a little roulette in the morning how things are going to go. But I think that's one thing is I've just come to accept is like every day is going to be different. There will be days where I'm harder on myself or harder on the kids. And, we have to start every morning new and fresh, and thankful that can be the case, because otherwise we can't live in the past with all the,
Exactly.
There will be messes every day, and we just got to show a little grace to ourselves and move on to the next day.
Yes. Lots and lots of grace goes around our house too, but even though it doesn't necessarily seem to affect the chaos, but we do what we can.
Exactly.
So, before we start talking about your breast cancer journey, I have one kind of I don't know if that's okay to kind of break it up, because I think that's two very big parts of your lives, kind of a pre-2018 breast cancer diagnosis and post, because I suspect a lot of things changed. But before we get into that, I know that you've had, a lot of really neat professional roles. And I think a lot of moms feel like, my head is barely above the water. It's chaos all the time. And you are very good at networking. So how did you find time, and how do you find time as a mom of two little ones to find those opportunities and the time to continue to network yourself, to continue to find new professional opportunities?
That's a great question. So I think I'll preface it. And this is something that I've become such a huge believer in, the Enneagram test. I took at the encouragement of some friends recently, about a month or two ago. I'm an Enneagram 7, which is the enthusiast.
Yes,
and
me too.
Oh, I love it. Yes. That's why we get along so well. But, I think that speaks to the networking piece where, like, for me, given a free moment, I will think of ways to connect with people, excuses for having coffee or lunch with people. Like, you do not have to twist my arm to do any of those things.
Yeah. Because it sounds fun, and why not, right?
Exactly. So really what I have to do is reverse it and say, okay, how much time can I actually spend with people this week? Because I also need to be productive in other areas.
Right.
But the one way I think all of us can network, and the tool that is free and most easy for us to use, is social media. And I know a lot of people will place a negative connotation on social media, but I think what we don't realize is, like, we control ourselves and our brands on social media. There is no obligation for you to post anything about your family, about your children. You don't really even have to post where you work, although that would be my recommendation, is that everyone approach it from a professional standpoint. Because I think when you put your professional persona out there, that is when these networking pieces can very easily occur. I know I've been able to meet people via social media who I may never have the chance to interact with in real life, but I will message them, I will interact with them as if we're friends. And then fortunately, if we get the chance to actually meet, it's like we already have a relationship, because we've been going back and forth on whatever platform it is. So my recommendation and how I do it is that I stay connected digitally with people, because when you do have that chance to interact in person, it is so much more meaningful, because you can kind of cut through some of the, the formalities of, like, oh, what do you do? Where are you from? Like, you already know that stuff about someone. Like, you can pick up that relationship from where you've left off on Facebook or Instagram, whatever it may be, and build it from there.
At a deeper level, right off the bat, in person.
Exactly.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, so shortly after you had your second daughter, was she even a year old when you were diagnosed?
No, she was
No.
not.
Okay, so tell us about that and your breast cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, so first thing people ask is like, oh, well, it must be genetic. Uh, Technically, from a genetic standpoint, I did have a genetic test. I do not carry any kind of mutation on my genes that would lead me to be more inclined to have breast cancer. So, as far as
Okay.
we know, this is not a genetic diagnosis. End of March 2018, I had been to a hot yoga class. And, Melissa, you well know, and your listeners well know that when you're a mom, in the mornings, you don't typically look at yourself in the mirror. I mean, maybe you catch a glimpse when you're driving someone somewhere, but you're just trying to get ready and
Right.
focus and get out the door. So I had the opportunity. I was at a hot yoga class. My husband had the kids. I came home. I was just taking a nice shower and getting dressed, and I noticed this discoloration on my left breast. And I was like, oh, that's really odd, because it was kind of like this color, like a purplish blue, like a scar that was healing. But I had no reason to have that there. And so that made me kind of feel around, do a self exam. And I noticed my tumor right away. It was about 6 centimeters. So for me, it felt kind of like a walnut in my breast. Wasn't
Mm-hmm.
in the right side, just the left side. And as you mentioned, I was still under a year as far as postpartum goes. And, lots of things, lots of changes can happen. I had dense breast tissue after my first daughter. And so I knew that this felt very different. But fortunately, because I was still within that window, my OB got me in very quickly the next day when I called Monday morning to tell him what was going on. So he saw me at the end of Monday. Tuesday morning, he had me in to meet with a breast surgeon because he was also concerned. And by Wednesday, I had my breast cancer diagnosis. I mean, it was just
Oh my gosh.
obvious to everyone I was meeting with. And, just to kind of let people know what that looks like process wise, I met with a breast surgeon. So the surgeon is the one who confirms a diagnosis. But she met with me, also was concerned about it, had me in for a mammogram, an ultrasound, and then she did the actual biopsy that afternoon once I had gone through the other tests. And then Wednesday gave me the confirmation. Fortunately, she had also prepped me for it. She told me that she was 90% sure that it was going to be positive for breast cancer. And so I was able to mentally prepare, although you never want to hear it out loud. I knew it was coming. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that happened at the end of March 2018. And on my daughter's first birthday, I was getting my port put into my chest that would allow me to receive chemotherapy. And then 2 days later, on my 10th wedding anniversary, I started chemo. So that started April 12th. And I was able to finish chemo at the end of July. I had a bilateral double mastectomy at the end of August, and now I am end of 2018. I'm wrapping up radiation, and I'll have in 2019 some targeted therapies that I'll continue to move through towards the end of March. But yeah, that's kind of the process from here.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all that, because that could very well make an impact on a woman's life who's listening. So thank you for sharing all that. Your little girls have watched this journey this year, and I imagine for your oldest, she probably notices more of the changes. But how in tune to all of this have they been? Like, what do they know and what do they understand? Especially because you shaved your head as part of the treatment process, kind of preparation for that. So
Mm-hmm.
how have you explained this to them, and kind of where are they in this process, do you think?
That I think it's different for kids of all ages. And so for our kids, it was interesting because at the beginning of the process, we asked, like, well, how do we approach this with our kids? And while there
Mm-hmm.
are some resources for that preschool age, really a majority of the social work that goes on in hospitals is geared towards elementary and older kids. And so we kind of picked and chose from the best practices. But one of the first things we did was we made sure that our kids were part of the head shaving process. I let my oldest know, Mom's gonna be taking some medicine that's gonna make my hair fall out, and so we're just gonna go ahead and cut my hair now. And while she she didn't quite understand, she was able to correlate, okay, medicine and hair. We have not used the word cancer directly with her, although she's probably overheard us saying it. We've always referred to it with her as mommy's boo-boo. We read a book with her that we found off Amazon that was actually written by a 13-year-old whose mom had gone through breast cancer. And it's in such great language for kids to understand, but it talks about mommy's boo-boo and that, doctors are going to help mommy's boo-boo get better. And here's the things mommy might go through. And our daughter really understood that book in a sense of it gave her kind of enough understanding where she really didn't ask a lot of questions. She wanted to read the book a few times,
right,
and that was about it. Now, my youngest was about 1, and I had read stories of women where once they shaved their head, because I had about shoulder length, maybe a little bit longer hair, once they shaved their head, they their youngest doesn't recognize them anymore. So that was really more my biggest fear. So I made sure that my kids were at my head shaving. We made it more of like a community party. We invited some of our closest friends. We invited their kids to come, because what we didn't want this to be was like a scary journey for everyone. It was like, it has to happen. So we're just going to do it together, and we're going to do it with people that love us. And fortunately that worked out really, really well. And as far as my youngest, like, she really doesn't recognize that anything is different or going on. She really doesn't know any differently. My 4-year-old started to ask more questions closer to my surgery. So chemo kind of would take me down and out for about a week at a time. I think she got used to that with mom being in bed and just being tired. But as we started talking about surgery, I don't know exactly what clicked with her, but she started asking me almost daily, Mom, have you eaten your oranges today? Have you eaten your oranges today? And I'm like, Elin, why is that so important? And she's like, because oranges are going to make your boo-boo better. And I was like, okay. Like, I don't even know. She must have read it or seen it somewhere where, eating fruit makes you healthy. But that was her correlation. And so after I had my surgery and after I started acting more like myself and I wasn't as fatigued anymore, she asked me, she's like, Mommy, is your boo-boo all better? And I did have a complete response to the chemotherapy. So I was like, yes, like the doctors have taken care of it. It's all gone. I'll have to do a little bit more medicine. But now she, we're a few months out of surgery and she really doesn't even ask anymore about it. So that's
awesome.
Yeah. And I think to me, that's kind of a clue that she gets it and she's satisfied with the answers, and now she's also moved on.
Yeah. Well, you have all handled it with so much grace, and it sounds like that has spilled over into how you've handled it with the girls too, which I think is really important. And it sounds like they've just kind of gone along with they I'm sure follow your cue, and if you were acting outwardly like, oh, this is something that shaving my head is like this tremendous, terrible ordeal, they would have fed off of that. So
exactly.
Yeah. So you as you've shared some of your story here, and over time you've shared a lot of your story. Now, before your diagnosis, you were already having an online presence, as we kind of talked about, but you had this term ginfluence, and that was pre-diagnosis, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
I was going to say, I developed Genfluence as a result of working in customer service. When I left litigation, I went in-house with a local Chick-fil-A franchisee. And so I developed the term just to remind me that my influence matters to the people that I'm interacting with. And that was much more like customer service focused. So I've been sitting on that term for a while.
And so talk to us about kind of how Ginfluence has morphed and developed this year in 2018 as you've gone through this breast cancer journey, and I guess a little bit about why you decided to share this part of your life and your story with the world.
Yeah, so in April, when I was getting ready to start chemo, my sister-in-law said, I want us to do a Race for the Cure team. I'm going to organize it. You just need to give me a name for the team and maybe like have your husband create a logo and let's put something on t-shirts. And so in the midst of all this, and Carl and I were brainstorming, he was like, well, what do you think about a team name? What do you want to do? And I said, well, I've always had this word Gymfluence in the back of my head, and, these grandiose ideas about a blog and everything. He's like, all right, now's the time to use it. So really it was at the encouragement of him that I chose to use Gymfluence as part of it. And really what it is, so the word influence, the definition of it is the capacity to have an effect on the behavior, the development, or the character of those around you. And, for me, I add that to have a positive effect on the development of those around you. And so we decided that Gymfluence would be the name of the team, and thus the name would evolve into my blog and everything else that I'm doing. But really, it's a reminder for people that your influence matters. It's a reminder for me that sharing my story, whether it be on podcast or on the blog or on social media, that when I'm doing these things, my goal is to have a positive effect on other people's behavior and development. And so if what I'm doing does not achieve that, then I'm not staying true to my own beliefs and what I'm trying to get across. But yeah, it's really that simple. And I think it's something that is important for all of us just to keep in the back of our minds, because I believe that if we all think about our influence, even the minutia of our influence, even when we're calling the customer service line of Amazon or whoever it is, and we're talking to the lowest of the low on a totem pole somewhere, those small moments can have a major impact on the character of those that we're interacting with. And fortunately, in 2018, it's given me an opportunity to also start speaking about that, which I've been pretty excited to share. But the message is that your influence matters. And so being able to talk to different audiences and let them know how my breast cancer journey has encouraged that and where it's evolved from. But also it's not about going through a major life change. It's something for all of us, that just recognizing those smaller stories and recognizing our own character and what we are portraying to people in whatever sphere we're in truly does matter and have an impact on those around us.
Absolutely. And part of what you've shared is the importance of movement. And I know you kind of had a series going on your Instagram, during this journey around, get out and move. And even as you were going through treatment, you were posting videos of yourself moving. So can you, I guess, share a little bit about why movement and being healthy through this journey was so important to you and what impact that had on your treatment?
Yes, exactly. So in 2012, I received my yoga teacher certification. And since then, it's been a huge focus to me just to find ways to move. I think probably one of my biggest maybe life hacks would be just the fact that I practice yoga and how much that does for me on a daily basis. And when I realized that other people were in the spot that I was in prior to finding yoga, where they were like, I need some way to exercise. I need some way to get my energy out or to find my focus, to find my clarity. I thought, well, I'll just share what I'm doing and you're welcome to copy me. I'm not an athlete. I've never done anything in the realm of competitions or, putting myself out there like that. What I do is I'm just an average person that finds a routine that she enjoys, that gets in a gym and being part of a community that I enjoy being in, and I just go after it. And so I started recording these things really mostly just to be accountable to myself. And people, again, kind of like my infertility journey, people started saying, oh, I've been doing your workouts on Instagram because you shared them, or you've encouraged me to change it up a little bit and try something harder. And so with kind of that encouragement, I continued to share them. And of course, you can see most of my workouts on my Instagram highlights. But yeah, it was something where I noticed at the time, and this has now been probably over the past 3 or 4 years, where if I share what I'm doing, it may give someone else an idea to try something new or to try something again, because frequently, we might have a bad experience with something when it comes to physical fitness and we just rule everything out. And we shouldn't do that. We should keep trying till we find something we really like and enjoy. And so that's my goal in sharing that. And I think too, also, during this cancer journey, a lot of people think that you can't do things because you're doing chemotherapy or you're doing radiation or you've had surgery. And that is not true. There's still a lot you can do. And so I'm essentially kind of going back to the basics with my Instagram stories and what I'm doing to exercise, because my body has reset itself in a number of ways. And so putting myself out there to show people, it's okay if you have setbacks. There are still things that you can do. But really the most important message there is exercise and finding something you enjoy to clear your mind, especially for moms. We build up so much stress on the inside that if we do not take care of ourselves, we simply will not be able to take care of our families.
Yep, I completely agree. So if you were to look back to Jen Hoverstad on January 1st of 2018, what would you say to her and what advice would you give her now that if you knew then what you know now about your journey this year, what would you say?
Okay. So as far as this year goes, I think what I would tell myself, the beginning of 2018 to, the end of the year, is that you are going to have so many things to enjoy throughout the year, but it's also going to be very hard. I would remind myself, at the beginning of 2018, I would worry about all of these small things, and I would really get caught up in, just the things that could bring me down, and letting, anxiety and frustration take over me for moments at a time. And with this cancer diagnosis, I have realized that those things just truly aren't important. And when you find yourself stuck in situations or tired or frustrated, there are so many ways that you can resolve those feelings. You have to get out and do it. And really, for my own health and sanity throughout the cancer treatment process, I've utilized a counselor. I've made sure that I've exercised. I've done things like acupuncture and, gotten massages to help just relieve the physical stress that comes with cancer treatment. But, for the first few months of the year, I was not doing any kind of self-care. I was working out, but that was about it. And so I think what I would tell myself, and I did January of this year, I had the flu on my birthday. And so in a way, my sister has reminded me, she's like, yeah, you had the flu on your birthday. So that was really just like the setting to the year. And maybe it was, but I think what the key was that, I would let those things kind of get to me. And now I realize what I can accomplish. I realize what I can get through. But those smaller things that were weighing me down at the beginning of 2018, at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, they're not important. And I think what's more important is finding your passion in life, finding what you truly want to be pursuing. Over 2018, I realized I've been in-house with different companies for the past 5 or 6 years. And I've realized that serving people through a process where when they go through something difficult, it's where my heart is at. And so I changed careers at the end of 2018, where I am now solely focused on estate planning and helping people prepare for really hard times in life, because that's what I had to do at a moment's notice. And I would rather people not have to feel the stress that we felt, where it was like, wait, where's our life insurance? And where's our estate plan? And what does my will and living will look like? We had to do all that because we needed it at the time.
Right.
And so now, I would tell myself at the beginning of 2018, hey, find that passion and find how you want to be serving and helping people, and go ahead and do it now. I don't think I'm a pretty stubborn person. And so at the beginning of 2018, I probably thought that I was doing that. I was working for a fantastic company with a fantastic team. And, end of 2018, beginning of 2019, I just had to make a change in order to fulfill what I felt like my calling was now as a result of my diagnosis. It certainly did cause a pivot in my life and cause a big change, but it's also something I'm pretty excited about. And I also recognize, I would, again, probably tell myself, at the beginning of 2018, like, hey, your life is going to change 180 degrees. Mm-hmm. It's going to be for the better. You're going to get through it, and you're going to help other people get through it too.
What an amazing perspective. That's amazing. And I think we all love you for that, for having that perspective. And maybe that's the Enneagram 7 in, partly in you. Yes. That, because I know that 7s, we look for the positive, and we're going to kind of reframe we reframe negative things into positive. And I think that has probably helped you a lot during this journey. So, that's wonderful. So one last kind of tip question. So if there's a mom listening who is, in that chaos that we talked about and just feels like, gosh, I have these dreams, I want to impact, I want to have leadership roles in my profession, or I want to really pursue this professional goal that I have, or I want to make an impact in my community through whatever journey they've been on personally, but they feel like they don't have the time, or they feel like people are going to judge them for that because they have these responsibilities with their kids. What is your one tip to that mom so that she can kind of break through that?
Find ways to invest in yourself. And I don't mean that necessarily financially. For me, for a long time, it's been listening to podcasts on my commute, or if I'm traveling, or even if I just have, 30 minutes to clean the house, I put some earphones in and I listen to podcasts that are going to invigorate me, that are going to give me ideas. Or maybe I listen to books. Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, which came out the end of 2018. It's just an incredible book to help people start thinking about how they can be a leader in whatever community they want to lead. And those things are fairly minimal as far as investment goes. What I did when I was going through treatment and I realized I'd have more downtime because I was on short-term disability during surgery and radiation at the end of 2018, what I realized was that I needed to find ways to continue to invest in myself and my well-being. So I actually made a monetary investment and invested in a speaking coach, Jess Ekstrom, who started and founded Headbands of Hope, also does a workshop for women who want to speak more and learn how to tell their story. And so that was something that my husband and I decided was a great use of money for us, and a great use of my time to really hone in on a skill that I wanted to continue to improve. So I think there's always ways that we can be investing in ourselves. And I know a lot of women feel like they have to ask permission to financially invest, whether that's, permission from their bank account or permission from a spouse or whoever it might be. But find a way to invest in yourself. And that literally can be, completely free through podcasts or audiobooks, or it can be making the jump and finding a coach or someone else who can really help you hone a skill. Or maybe it's just asking your supervisor at work and putting it out there saying, hey, I'd really like to be a leader one day. Like, how can you help me get there? Asking that question, being vulnerable in that relationship. Those are the things that we need to be actively doing, because what I have learned is that those opportunities are never just given to you. Yeah. It's not, leadership is not given to people who don't speak up. It's not given to people who don't express an interest in things. You have to put yourself out there. So finding ways to make you courageous and brave and confident going into those situations really requires that investment in yourself. So that would be my key takeaway and my encouragement for women, is just find ways to invest in yourself and then put yourself out there and ask for help from the people that you trust.
So where can people find you now that we're kind of wrapping up and we've talked about your online, influence, your Ginfluence? Where can people go find some Ginfluence online?
Yes. Well, I am all over the place. You can first find me at jenhoverstad.com, and on Twitter and Instagram, I'm also at jenhoverstad. And then I have a Genfluence page on Facebook. So just search for that, and I should be one of the few to show up there.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing your journey, and you're doing great things as a working mom and as in your speaking roles, influencing women who are going through a similar journey. So thank you for all that you do for the women that you're able to have an impact on, and thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Melissa.
You're welcome. What an incredible woman. I am so glad you were able to hear Jen's story, and I'm sure you are as inspired as I am by her strength and focus during her breast cancer journey. Jen certainly is a leader in her profession and her community, but she remains so down to earth about her chaotic mornings, which I think we can all relate to. If you're enjoying the Influential Motherhood podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a review on iTunes so more women and moms can find the show and hear the inspiring stories being shared each week. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.